Hello Internet, and let him who hath understanding reckon the number of the beast. A couple of weekends ago I introduced my partner to the Omen trilogy, and then after that, for a bit of a laugh, I decided to reread, I don't know if you guys know these exist, Omen 4, Armageddon 2000, and Omen 5, The Abomination, Joseph McGill's continuation of the book franchise. Gordon McGill, sorry, he wrote the novelisation to The Final Conflict as well. David Seltzer wrote the original Omen that the film was based on. Can't for the life of me remember who novelised Omen 2, but today A&E have released the first proper promo, the first proper look for their Damien TV series, a 10-part mini-series. They've released a teaser a little while ago, but bar weird sort of music video director shots of the lead and Rottweiler's faces, there was nothing. It was a teaser. Okay, we get our first proper look at what the series is going to look like, and the amazing thing that jumps out straight away. Now we were told that this would work as a sequel to Richard Donner's original The Omen, but I was not expecting it to be so closely tied to the return to locations, the use of footage from the original movie. We've got our modern day Damien returning to his childhood home and turning the light on and gazing upon a portrait of him as a child with Robert and Kathy Thorne, Gregory Peck and Lee Remick. So this is a direct continuation of an almost 40-year-old movie. I think that's going to become more and more the norm these days in cinemas. At the moment, we've got Terminator Genesis, which says ignore everything after Terminator 2. Superman Returns, Bryan Singer's movie, a while back said ignore everything after Superman 2. This is a direct continuation, and us horror fans are more than used to this with the Halloween franchise and H20 coming out and saying essentially ignore everything after Halloween 2, and we'll pick up after this one. Looks like the TV series is picking up its threads directly from 1976's The Omen, and more than likely ignoring Omen 2 and definitely ignoring Omen 3 because Damien's dead by the end of that. And I think we've got the potential to have something really interesting. I'm a big fan of the Omen trilogy. It was the first series of films that I saw where I was conscious that I was too young to be seeing this. It was forbidden fruit. There was the frisson of breaking a taboo, watching an 18 certificate horror movie when at the time I was probably about 11 or 12, if memory serves me correctly. But I will be the first to acknowledge that the films aren't without their faults, especially Omen 2 and The Final Conflict, but they've also got some amazing strengths to them as well. And what I'm really hoping, what I'm really crossing my fingers for, is that this TV series can repackage the best of Omen 2 and The Final Conflict. Damien in this seems to be in his early 30s, if not his late 20s, and some people are questioning how that can be. Surely he should be at least in his 40s. But the Omen series of films has always played fast and loose with its own chronology. They never specify what time they're set in. We always assume that they're sort of set in some kind of constantly resetting now, and that now seems to retcon the films that come before it. Let me explain. The Omen in 1976, Damien is 5 years old. 2 years later, in 78, he's turning 13, and 3 years after that, in 81, he's 32, 33. So the franchise has got form. Now, it appears from what we've been told that the TV series is going to play quite a lot like a conspiracy thriller, and I'm fine with that. The makers of it say that they're going to try and push the envelope with the kind of violence you can get away with on TV. I would suggest that in this day and age that envelope has been well and truly pushed, if not with things like The Walking Dead, then certainly with Hannibal, which is one of the most beautifully violent, gory and explicit TV shows that has ever been made, if not the most. It turns violence and blood and gore into practically an art form. But it looks like we'll get the signature Omen kills of the franchise if you're a fan of that. But it also looks like we're dealing with a Damien who isn't aware of his heritage, and there are lots of factions around him who are trying to maneuver him for their own aims. Excuse me. Some obviously trying to destroy him, some trying to manipulate him, use him, put him in the position that they think he needs to be if they're disciples of his, which can go a couple of ways. I'm a little tentative with the notion of a late 20, early 30-year-old Damien who is still unaware of who he is and where he springs from. But I guess I remind myself, thinking back to my Christian upbringing, that if I remember rightly, Jesus himself didn't start his ministry until he was in his 30s. So I guess there's scriptural precedent there, and you can argue whether or not Jesus knew who he was, maybe with or without recourse to the Apocrypha. I didn't come here to start talking about Bible studies. I think it would perhaps detract from the character of Damien a little, being so old and so unaware of who he is. But what we will get from the series is a slow understanding of who he is and where he comes from and what his destiny is. That was one of the aspects of Damien Omen 2 that I really liked. I dig the fact that the franchise has him at different ages. One of the things we'll lose from that, certainly I guess in series 1, depending on where they go, depending on whether it gets picked up, is we'll lose Sam Neill's an adult Damien, completely aware of who he is and at the height of his powers. And that was one of the big strengths of the final conflict for me, when Sam Neill was being darkly charming and was more evil the more matter of fact he was, asking his aid to kill his son, and again citing scripture and Abraham, and I'm asking no less of you than the Christian God, than the Nazarene's God has asked of Abraham. He goes a little off tracks when he's out and out evil and he's a bit eye-rolly, but this TV series is get to a point where our actor will be that personification of charming evil. What we will get, which is where I think Omen 2 fell down, and if you listen to the commentary track on the DVD, by the way, if you're interested in commentary tracks at all, the one to listen to is Richard Donner's for The Omen, because that man can tell a story, and it's an absolute... The time will fly by listening to his audio commentary. The audio commentary on Omen 2, I can't remember... I think it's the director's commentary, and I think, so forgive me if I'm wrong and it's a producer's commentary, but he says at the end of the film that he believes there were script wranglings between the director and the producer about what story to tell, and he believes that they should have pitched Damien's age slightly older than turning 13, and that way he would have started getting interested in girls. You could have brought the sexual element into it as well and tied it more directly in with puberty, and I agree completely. That would have been a much more interesting story to tell. Damien, right at the end of that film, remember at the graduation party with 2 girls on his arm, starting to flex his evil muscles, and you just think, my God, what kind of possible experience could Damien Thorne's first girlfriend have ever had. She might have thought that he was the absolute bee's knees. He could charm the birds out of the sky, perhaps. Who knows? But I always thought that through plot necessity, Damien went from the shocking revelation to who he is to accepting it very quickly within the film. So it would be nice to see that explored more slowly in the TV series. Is the show going to be any good? Who knows? I hope it's good. Obviously, we all hope it's good. The source material, the films have got so much cool stuff in there to mine. Barbara Hershey's in it, taking over the Mrs. Blaylock sort of role, I guess, as weird mentor nanny, but he doesn't need a nanny. So is this Damien going to be more suspicious of people? Which it could mine the source material for all the best of what the Omen has to offer and ditch all the absolute worst. Or the pendulum could swing the other way and it could be utter trash. Who knows? But there's some amazing stuff there. I've never really been a fan of the daggers of Megiddo, the 7 daggers, but they're in the original film, so they will be in this. That's part of the mythos. I loved the hell out of Ygael's wall in part 2. The mad priest who had visions of the Antichrist, the devil visited him and he painted them on a wall. I never really understood in the final conflict why, if you needed all 7 daggers to kill the Antichrist, why the 7 monks, the first thing they would do would be to split the 7 daggers up and all go off. That's fucking stupid. I never understood that. But there are weak parts and strong parts to all of these movies. I mean, my God, Damien's actions, what he orders, the second slaughter of the innocents in the final conflict, is on an intellectual level the most horrific thing in all 3 movies. So if we can go there, if we can get to these kind of places of sheer cosmic horror, we could be in for a treat. But they've done a bold thing, I think, continuing a 40-year-old film and picking up the continuity from there. Let's really hope they can pull it off, because we're losing Hannibal and this could fill that void. God willing.